Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire from 161 to 180 AD. As the last of the 5 good emperors, he presided over a period of peace and stability known as the Pax Romana. But Aurelius wasn't just a skilled statesman. He was also a profound thinker who sought to understand the deepest truths of the universe and the human condition. Born into a wealthy and influential family, Aurelius seemed destined for greatness from a young age. He received the best education available, studying subjects like literature, rhetoric, and philosophy. But it was the Stoic school of thought that resonated with him most deeply. The Stoics believed that the path to happiness and meaning lay in living virtuously and in accordance with reason. They emphasized self-discipline, resilience in the face of adversity, and serving the greater good. These ideas would shape Aurelius's approach to life and leadership. As emperor, Aurelius had access to unlimited wealth, power, and indulgence. He could have easily become a tyrant or a hedonist like many rulers before him. But instead, he chose to use his privileges to make life better for his subjects. For 19 years, Aurelius consistently put the needs of the Roman people before his own desires. He worked tirelessly to uphold the law, improve infrastructure, and provide for the poor. He faced numerous crises during his reign, including wars, plagues, and famines, but always responded with courageous action and sober judgment. Through it all, he remained a humble and disciplined man, uncorrupted by the trappings of power. How did Aurelius stay so grounded and principled in a position where he could have had anything he wanted? The answer lies in his commitment to Stoic philosophy and practices. For Aurelius, Stoicism wasn't just an abstract theory. It was a way of life, and the goal of that life was not personal pleasure or glory, but wisdom, justice, and service. Aurelius was a living embodiment of Plato's ideal of the philosopher king, a ruler who combines political prowess with deep wisdom and integrity. His dual role as a world leader and a sage makes him one of the most remarkable figures in history. In an era when power so often corrupted, he showed that it's possible to wield great influence while staying true to one's values. But how do we know so much about Aurelius's inner life and philosophy? The answer lies in the extraordinary document he left behind: Meditations. Many of Marcus Aurelius' most profound insights come from his personal journals, which were later published as the book Meditations. Unlike most philosophical texts, Aurelius never intended for these writings to be read by anyone else. They were simply his private reflections on life and Stoic practice. Meditations is a deeply intimate work, more like a diary than a formal treatise. In these pages, we see Aurelius conversing with himself, trying to digest and apply the principles of Stoicism to the challenges he faced as emperor. Far from being abstract or academic, his musings are grounded in the grit of real life. What's striking about Meditations is how relatable and timeless the entries feel, despite being nearly 2,000 years old. Aurelius grapples with the same existential questions and daily frustrations that many of us face. The search for meaning and purpose, the struggle against temptation and distraction, the need to rise above petty grievances. Reading these reflections, we get the sense of a real human being wrestling with his thoughts and emotions. Aurelius comes across as wise but also vulnerable, disciplined but also struggling. We see him coaching himself through hard times, much like we all have to do. This is a large part of what makes meditation so powerful. It's not a detached sermon from on high, but an relatable record of a fellow traveler trying to navigate life. The book feels less like a rigid prescription and more like a practical guide or a conversation with a wise friend. At the same time, the entries are filled with philosophical insight and psychological depth. Aurelius was clearly a master of Stoic thought, with a gift for distilling complex ideas into memorable maxims. His words have a meditative, almost poetic quality that makes them stick in the mind and invite reflection. Some key themes emerge again and again in the pages of Meditations: accepting what we can't control, focusing on the present moment, treating others with kindness and understanding, staying humble in the face of success, finding opportunity in adversity. Together, they form the core tenets of Aurelius's worldview and his approach to living a good life. But Meditations is more than just a collection of wise sayings. It's a practice, a method of self-dialogue and self-coaching. By writing down his reflections, Aurelius was training himself to embody Stoic virtues, much like an athlete trains their body. The goal was not just to contemplate ideas, but to deeply internalize them and translate them into action. In this way, Meditations offers a model for how we can all use journaling and reflection to become our best selves. By regularly examining our own thoughts and habits, we can catch unhelpful patterns, cultivate better perspectives, and consciously align ourselves with our deepest values. As Aurelius shows, this kind of mental training can be transformative. Perhaps most of all, Meditations is a testament to the importance of inner work and character development. In an age of surface-level distractions and quick fixes, Aurelius reminds us that the true path to a meaningful life is through the cultivation of wisdom, self-mastery, and virtue. That's the real project of a lifetime. Let's explore some of the key themes from Meditations in more depth and how they formed the basis for Aurelius's Stoic operating system for a life well lived, living in accordance with nature. For the Stoics, the goal of life was to live in harmony with nature. Just as trees grow as tall as they can and birds build the best nests they can, humans should strive to fulfill their natural potential and purpose. Aurelius believed that for humans, our essential nature is to be rational, social, and virtuous creatures. Our highest calling is not the pursuit of pleasure, wealth, or status, but rather wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control. To solve the universe is to align ourselves with these deeper truths. As he writes in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." In other words, we can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. And the wisest response is to face life's challenges with equanimity and virtue, dealing with difficult people. As an emperor, Marcus Aurelius had to manage all sorts of difficult people: corrupt politicians, scheming courtiers, aggressive neighboring rulers. But rather than resent them, he tried to face them with empathy and understanding. He reminds himself that flawed people are simply a part of nature, like thorns on a rose bush. Getting angry at them is as pointless as resenting the weather. We may not like it, but that's just how the universe works sometimes. Additionally, Aurelius humbles himself by remembering that he too is a flawed being who makes mistakes. Who is he to harshly judge others? As he puts it, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, "The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil." The solution is not to change others, which is often impossible, but to look inward and govern one's own response. Aurelius tells himself to greet difficult people with patience, forgiveness, and even humor when possible. Most of all, he tries to love and accept them as part of the grand scheme of nature. Overcoming adversity. On top of dealing with difficult people, Marcus Aurelius had to confront major crises during his rule: military conflicts, plagues, famines, betrayals. But rather than live in fear of misfortune, Aurelius trained himself to almost welcome hardship as a test of his character. He writes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, obstacles can be opportunities to practice virtue, creativity, and resilience. There is no growth or glory without struggle. Complaining about adversity is therefore pointless and undignified. A wise person accepts that some level of misfortune is inevitable in life. What matters is how you handle it. Will you rise to the occasion with courage and persist, or collapse in despair? Aurelius chooses to focus on what he can control, his own judgment, attitude, and actions in the face of hardship. He tells himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is a profoundly empowering mindset. Aurelius is saying that we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we interpret and respond to events. We can use our reason to find the opportunity and meaning in adversity. The trap of materialism. Despite having access to unlimited riches, Marcus Aurelius warned against becoming attached to or corrupted by material possessions. He believed that true happiness and meaning come from within, not from external status or wealth. As he puts it, "It is not death that a man should fear, but rather he should fear never beginning to live." The point of life is not to accumulate trinkets or chase fleeting pleasures, but to do something meaningful with the time we're given. Aurelius practiced what he preached by living a relatively simple life, even as emperor. He avoided lavish displays of wealth and didn't get attached to his privileges. He constantly reminded himself that all earthly possessions and glories are temporary in the grand scheme of things. This didn't mean that Stoics rejected all worldly things or lived as ascetics. Rather, it was about maintaining a healthy relationship with the material world, enjoying nice things without becoming enslaved by them. The goal was to be self-sufficient and content, regardless of circumstances, meditating on mortality. One way Marcus Aurelius maintained a sense of perspective was by constantly contemplating his own mortality. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This wasn't a morbid fascination with death, but rather a reminder to make the most of the present moment and not take anything for granted. At any point, our loved ones, our possessions, even our own lives can be taken away. So we must cherish them while we can. Paradoxically, meditating on death can bring a greater appreciation for life. It can lend a sense of urgency and perspective, helping us focus on what really matters. As Aurelius put it, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." This concept of memento mori, Latin for remember you must die, was a common practice among Stoics. By keeping death in mind, they aimed to live each day with purpose, gratitude, and integrity, because we never know how much time we have left. The Stoic life. Taken together, Marcus Aurelius's reflections in meditations form a sort of mental operating system for navigating the unpredictable challenges of life. While we can't control many events, we can control our mindset, habits, and responses. Like any good operating system, Stoicism aimed to be a coherent, stable framework for thriving in a chaotic world. Its applications included practices for dialing down anger, finding meaning in adversity, maintaining perspective, and cultivating resilience. At its core, this philosophy held that a truly meaningful life is not about worldly success or pleasure, but about aligning ourselves with timeless virtues and our deepest nature as rational, social creatures. It's about mastering our minds and serving the greater good. Of course, this is all easier said than done, as Aurelius himself acknowledged, but that's precisely why he wrote his meditations, as a form of continual self-coaching and self-therapy. Change starts from within, and what better way to internalize a philosophy than by journaling on it daily, turning its principles into lived experience. Aurelius's writings were never meant as a formal treatise, but rather a practice, a way of digesting and applying wisdom to his own life. We can apply a similar approach by reflecting on Stoic ideas, examining our own thought patterns, and consciously choosing our outlook and actions. In this way, philosophy becomes not just a set of beliefs, but a way of being. This, perhaps, is Marcus Aurelius's greatest lesson for us today. Of course, this is no easy task. It requires constant effort, reflection, and a willingness to learn from our mistakes. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and share it with anyone who might benefit from these timeless teachings. Consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell icon to get notified of new videos exploring philosophy, psychology, and the art of living.